Hey, Sunshines.
We are coming live to you tonight, spray tanned and all. I really do apologize. And those that are audio listening, thank you this one time for not watching the video because I look like I just washed in swamp water.
I am going to need you guys, if you're not a video listener, I need you to switch to Spotify and start video watching because I think it's a whole different experience to see Brittany Mills in her beauty and glory.
Right. Beauty and glory.
She's here. She's real. She's genuine. We can never say she's not genuine.
Authentic, okay?
She's authentic.
Heavy on authentic.
Yeah, we're here for the authenticity.
While I'm talking about a fake tan. All right, you know what? Neither here nor there. We are going to introduce you all to Jess Mollo. She is absolutely phenomenal, and she comes with an incredible story, super duper powerful. And honestly, her big thing is connecting with the community, and that's what empowers her. And so, what a wonderful person. And I mean, it was a blessing to have her on.
Yeah, she is like a beautiful human inside and out, and like her focus on kindness is something I think we could probably use more of in this world. So Jess, who is the founder of Piper Fox Social. So let me just tell you guys, it's going to be a long running list. She'll tell you she doesn't do it all, but she does it all. Does it all and is a mother. So she's a mother of one, and she has another one on the way in 2.5 weeks.
Yeah,
mind you, she's doing a podcast 2.5 weeks before delivering a human. I'm like, oh, okay, that's casual. You don't do it all. It's totally fine. So she is the founder of Piper Fox Social. She also is a nonprofit co-owner, QC Swap, which many of you might be familiar with if you're local here in Charlotte. She's also a children's book author, and really is just big and focused on connecting other people, and co-hosts a podcast herself.
Yeah, I mean,
she does it all. I am so excited. Like, I think there's a lot to take away from this, but I'm so excited for those of you who are in that phase of your life, who are experiencing motherhood with all of your dreams and goals and visions, to be able to hear from her. And I think even if you're not in motherhood, to understand that like you can balance whatever you'd like to balance. It's just about how you balance it.
Yeah, putting your mind to it for sure.
It's beautiful.
So guys, y'all are in for a treat tonight, and we appreciate everyone listening. Of course, reminder, Apple and Spotify, like, comment, share. And we are on the Facebook now.
Yes.
We are on the face of the book and on the YouTube.
We're on YouTube. Yeah.
We are on
if
YouTube.
You're an Apple listener and you want to see the video and you don't do the Spotify thing, every episode is live on YouTube. Oh, you guys, I'm not a social human. Like, I don't do the socials. And your girl's really learning. We're learning it all. We're growing. So you can catch us on YouTube and then rate this podcast as well if you like it. If you don't worry about it. Keep on going. And we appreciate each and every one of you. And we're so excited for you guys to hear. We are here with Jess. We are so excited to be chatting with Jess today. Like, blown away. Jess is doing it all.
Quite literally.
No big deal. Also growing a tiny human while doing it all.
Tiny human there.
And it is amazing. So Jess does a little bit of everything. So I think we're going to get a really broad scope today, which I'm excited about. And I'm hoping that's really relatable for a lot of different people, and maybe inspirational for people who are like, okay, that's interesting to me. I want to know more about that. And I want to better dive into that. So I would love to, and I'm going to be selfish here. I would love to kick off. You're an entrepreneur. How did you get into entrepreneurship?
I have always, since I was a little girl, I literally made a list of things in life that I wanted to do. And like, I wanted to own my own business because my family had their own business. And I mean, there was also things like on there, like I wanted to be Lizzie McGuire. Like, that's not going to happen, but that was on my list. Right. But writing a children's book was on my list. Giving back to people was on my list. And so basically it's always been on the list. I went to school for marketing, went to UNC Charlotte, and then business management. And then from there, just like everything took off for me. COVID was the worst, but it was definitely the best for my business. So don't love it, but silver lining is that kind of forced me out of working for someone and then completely working for myself. So yeah.
I love that. I also too, so getting to know you and everything through, I don't know, bio, screen, all of that, through looking at your business, I always want to like highlight those that are in Charlotte. And so you're born and raised here, you grew up here, you went to school here, you don't plan on leaving. I always like to ask, how are you, um, because a lot of people, they're like, oh, well, I want to move to like know different people, or I want to move for different opportunities. How have you created that mindset of like, hey, I'm still in this same place, but like I know that there's more and I want to go after and I want to go and get it.
So for me, Charlotte is such a transplant place in general. So you've always got new people. And while the world is so small, Charlotte is so small, it's also really, really big. The one thing that I will say about myself is I am such a go-getter where it's like I always want to meet people. My circle is never like packed. My circle can always grow. And I think Charlotte is the best place for that. And it's like, seeing these new businesses pop up or new podcasts or whatever it might be, it's like an inspirational place to be because everyone seems so driven. And so it's one of those things that like I can never see myself leaving because even in addition to this entrepreneur side or meeting new people all the time, the food scene, like the food, the things to do, all of that is just so special with Charlotte. So, in addition to meeting the people and never wanting to leave because it's just such an up and coming, growing, beautiful place, it's like food, the things to do, it's a wonderful place. And
It's booming
I
for
agree.
sure.
Yeah.
So you're constantly connecting with new people. I know when I first moved here, I was like, and I think a lot of people who are those of us who are transplants and maybe those who are local are like, how do I continue to do that? I think it's a little intimidating. Like, as women, we can tend to not be so kind and welcoming at times. And I think there's the stigma of like the cattiness and the unkindness. But I will say personally, like my experience in Charlotte, that every single woman, like, has just been like, hey, I want to help you grow. I want to meet you. Like, let me encourage you. Let me uplift you. How are you staying connected, kind of expanding those connections? And what advice do you have for women who are looking to kind of build that connection and maybe that big circle that you've got here in Charlotte?
Mhm. Honestly, you just have to put yourself out there. It's like even I just hired a girl to work on our team to help me through maternity leave, and she's like, you just talk to anyone, right? And my advice to her is like, well, if you don't talk to someone, you don't know where that conversation would go. And the worst that could happen is they might not want to talk back, right? But the
Mm-hmm.
best thing that could happen is you could literally become this person's best friend 10, 10 years down the road. You're looking back thinking, thank God I said hey to her and I didn't like let whatever, however, here's the thing too, however someone is carrying themselves, it might not be that they're a bad person, they don't want to talk, they whatever, right? It might just be because they're also feeling these feelings that you're feeling, these, oh God, do I say something, do I not, so my best advice is just like dive in. If you see something, compliment someone. If you like it, compliment them. If you feel like they might be a little uncomfortable, do your best to make them not feel uncomfortable. Make them know that they're like welcome in the room. And I think, there's so many like networking events. Gosh, you could even go to a restaurant and meet someone. I just love that, like sitting at a bar in Charlotte, like I said, it's a transplant place. So it's a lot of people like you moving here, a lot of people don't know anyone, right? And so I'm always one to just like dive into conversation, especially if I see someone by themselves, because I know how I feel when I'm by myself. And so I just try to always approach people, make them feel welcome, like they belong, like they're, um, and never let how they're carrying themselves affect how I'm going to speak to them, because it's like it's crazy. You're like, "Hey, how are you?" And instantly they light up. And you're like, "Oh, that's all they needed." So, I think that's my best advice, right? It's like just don't be afraid to say, "Hey." The worst that could happen is they're having a bad day and that's it. The best that could happen is you make a lifelong friend out of it or some sort of connection.
Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned that of like going to a bar and like sitting down like alone or something, and like you can talk to these people, you can talk to other women, you can of course talk to anyone. But there was one time where it kind of like clicked with me that it's nearly powerful going somewhere by yourself. At least that's how I feel. So like going to a restaurant by yourself and sitting down, not like at the bar, because it's a bit more normalized, but like going to sit down, getting sat at a restaurant and eating your food by yourself, a lot of people will not do it. Um, and my best friend Sydney, who actually listens to the podcast, she's going to hear me and she's going to be like, Brittany, because she refuses to do it. She's like, oh my God, like I feel so awkward. I don't know what to do. And one day I Snapchatted them and I was like, I'm superior. I'm sitting in a restaurant all by myself and I feel powerful just because it is so, I don't know, the stereotypical thing of like, you have to have someone with you, or you need someone to break that silence. But like, I wish we would all kind of tap into like, I can carry and I can walk into a room by myself and I can still own the room.
Yep. And you can own the room, and it's an instant confident boost, right? So like it's a little nerve wracking to maybe do that. Like Sydney, if you're listening, it might be like a little, scary to go and sit down by yourself. But then when you leave, you're going to be like, oh, heck yeah. Like I just sat there by myself. I don't do this all the time. And so I think that it's like the best part of it. It's like, it really is powerful because then it like snowballs into this like mindset. It's just a whole, you just have to, I mean, I have my moments. We have our moments. We all do. We're human. But at the end of the day, I just constantly remind myself, like, if I don't take the step, I'll never know where the step leads me. So, go to a restaurant by yourself. Say hey to that random person that looks like they're having the worst day ever, because maybe you saying hey will make their day better.
Yeah, I agree. And I wanted to ask you too, as far as like taking that next step, like you're never gonna know what's on the other side unless you do it. Was that always your mindset as far as like entrepreneurship? You were like, okay, if I don't do this, like I'm not gonna know. Or like what led you for that final step of being like, okay, now's the time?
Honestly, no. So I've always been a very extroverted person. So I've always been like the person in the room that you're like, well, if no one talks, Jess will talk, right? But when it came to like owning, yeah, right. I'm like, oh, thanks for inviting me to the party. It's my party, right? Okay, good. But no, I just, owning a business was very hard, and in the whole imposter syndrome, whatever, that is such a thing. I still deal with it till this day, but I think what's helped me is just talking myself off the ledge, reminding myself of my worth, reminding myself that like all these things that I feel, others feel too, and that's very powerful in itself, because when we realize that, like, people aren't breaking us down like we think they are. People aren't judging us. People aren't saying like, "Oh, she's so bad at social media. She's so bad at, that post she just did, or, whatever. She just got a spray tan 3 minutes ago." So,
Yeah, my girlfriend.
Who would be saying that?
So my honeys and my sunshines that are watching this, Jess is a real one for that one, because honestly, I was like, God, when am I gonna let people know why I look like a Oompa Loompa? So you know what, friend, I appreciate you for that. Yes, everybody, and those that are listening to audio, I just got a spray tan quite literally now, I'd say 10 minutes ago. So we're in the drying process, and yes, I am in a robe. So we're pretty
and
real.
you look beautiful. Okay, powerful.
That's it.
I have a photo shoot tomorrow, so I had to bronze this skin up a little bit.
Oh my God! Listen, if you can't tone it, tan it. That is like my thing.
I love it. I'm just tan it always. It's amazing.
Right?
So,
it's like, if you don't feel confident, get a spray tan. Period.
It'll change. Yeah, put some self tanner on. It's a game. I'm a whole different
Literally.
hair. Like I'm unrecognizable. It's insane.
Yes,
it's pretty
too.
cool. I appreciate you for that one. So, Jess, like this crazy, incredible entrepreneur who also runs a nonprofit, an author, you own and host your own podcast. Like you're doing it all. And then caveat here, you're also a mother. Like you've got one little one and another little one on the way. It seems like you have a million things running. And we actually were talking to Meredith Dean about this last night. We were like, we are tired. Like we're doing like a couple things, But then we're like, how do the women who are juggling all of this with motherhood, like, how the heck do you do it?
Prepare us, please. Like, what do we do?
How I'm like, I'm always just like, and then you get on, you look like you're a put together human and you've got your stuff together. You have more than two, like I have 2 brain cells at 6 p.m. and I'm not growing humans, raising humans. How do you do it?
Oh my God. First of all, I love Meredith Dean. She is a
Yeah.
dear friend. She is the best. But yeah, I honestly, I don't do it all, right? It's like it's taken me a long time to figure out a system, and even the system is changing daily. I definitely think that having my circle and having my village and leaning on family and friends and learning to delegate and learning to hey, it's not going to work if you try to control every single thing. And so I've gotten to a place now where I've started delegating things. I've started asking for help instead of just doing it all myself, because for years I couldn't process delegating, because if I don't do it, then it's not going to get done right, or they might not, or maybe I'm going to put too much on their plate and they're going to be overwhelmed, and then they're going to be mad and they're not going to want to do it, all these thoughts. And then you realize once you start to delegate, like, oh, it actually works a lot better. And these people that I'm delegating to have their ideas. And it's like, the nonprofit that I run is with my two best friends, and we do this big event. And it's funny because it was just us three. But we recently brought on two guys to like help with like the financial stuff, or, and it took us forever to do that. And finally I was like, if we don't delegate, we're not going to be able to like sustain. So like we have to delegate. And yeah, it's just delegating, leaning on your people, realizing that there are times that you can't do it all. I also live like religiously by my calendar,
And
religiously. So that helps me. And I, honest to goodness, like will schedule like at home, turn off your phone. And it is literally like 7 p.m. until like 9 a.m.
yep.
I'm telling you, it's crazy. But it works, and it's what works for me, and it just a mental check-in. And that's the best I got. And then you're just really tired all the time.
She's like, and then the tired hits you. So it's funny that you mentioned that about like being in control and all of that, because I was actually talking to a dear friend of mine today about how I have to be in control of everything. Um, and even like in my personal life, professional life, it's like I just want the control, and you want to delegate. But my thing is I'm just going to be honest with you. I'm not worried about like, oh, that's too much on their plate, because I'm like, I know how much I can handle. You can handle it. It's fine. You have 3 things,
Hmm.
I've got like 3 million. Anywho,
Yes.
but I think about it, I'm like, but it's like, is it going to be done correctly? Is it going to be done in the timeline? Is it going to be done in the most efficient way? Like, why did you do it that way? And I'm like, Brittany, okay, one, you need help. Two, I'm like, but then you get down to that point and it's like, you're like, okay, if I want to control everything, then I have to take on how much responsibility and pressure that is, or I need to like give it up and actually delegate these things and like relax a little bit. How do you find that happy medium of like, okay, I can trust this person or I can just be confident in them? You get what I'm saying?
Yes. I'm still working on that. I definitely like, especially my girls that work, I don't say for me, with me. Um, they always give me a hard time because they're like, oh, imagine that Jess wants to change something. And especially Hannah, that works with me, she always gives me a hard time. She's like, oh yeah, I figured I'd run this by you, but I figured you would make 87 changes to it. So here you go. You know,
Yeah.
um, so I'm still working on that, but I will say that that's another moment of me like talking to myself and
Mhm.
realizing, okay, because this is going to sound very uh, bad, but it doesn't mean to be that bad. I think my way is the best way, right? And it's not always the best way.
Literally same.
Right. And it's that control freak in us that like we just think like, no, and even like after the fact sometimes I'm like, oh, I probably should have just let her do that. That's not even that big of a deal, right? So I'm trying to remind myself in these moments of, hey, is this going to really matter? This one thing? No. Does it matter if it's done exactly how I would do it? No. As long as it's done to a standard that I hold them to, I'm fine, right? And I think over time they learn those standards, and you give them a grace period, right? So it's like even with my team, I'm like, hey, hear me out. I know I can be controlling. I know I can be like change everything, but just bear with me. I promise. Like once I teach you the ropes, I'm gonna leave you alone. And that's exactly what I do. So
Yeah.
I think it's just like leaning on people enough, because if we don't give them space to make mistakes and we just assume that it's not going to be like we want it, then we'll never know, and our plate will never clear up enough where we're not like pulling out our hair. And that's why I just remind myself, I'm like, listen, you're never going to get to where you want to get if you don't just trust. And that's with everything, right? I
Yeah.
mean, that's like trusting a bubba. That's like trusting my husband to like load the dishwasher, right? I mean, shit. Like when I tell you I'm a control freak, I'm telling you, like,
That's exactly how I am. And this is something that like I genuinely struggle with because I think about in relationships, I'm like, okay, but why did you not go here first? Like that doesn't make sense to me. And then I will like and I'll create an argument. I will be the first listen, the first thing about a problem is you need to admit it. And I will do that. But
yes,
yeah, it's insane that I'm like, okay, I just need to stop being a control freak. But then I'm like, God, if I give it up, like it's half of the time beneficial because I'm like, it's gonna be done right.
I know. I'm guilty of that, and I feel like, and I'm. It's so funny to hear you say that, because I always say, I'm like, okay, the first step to having a problem is admitting you have the problem. So like, it's fine. I understand. Okay, before you guys criticize me, right?
There are,
Before you can talk about behind my back,
so we're clear,
would
there
you?
are things that follow the admitting for the two of you. Just so you both know. There's some things that follow, but you get there in your own time. There's no judgment.
Oh my God.
Right, right. But
Um, Jess, I wanted to ask you, so for especially for our listeners as well, your nonprofit, I want you to explain like what is it? What all comes with it? What do you do? Like what's your favorite part about it? Really give us some insight about it as a whole.
yes. Oh, my favorite. It like lights me up.
Great.
So it's called QC Swap, which is Queen City Socials with a Purpose. And what we do is we gather socials and social people in Charlotte, and we fundraise. We collect money to give back. Our specific give back niche is to children in Charlotte who need it. So not only children living in poverty, but we also give back to children with disabilities, children with life altering situations that they may be going through. And every year, it'll be our fourth year this year. We throw an event called Bad Prom for a good cause. It always sells out. It all the ticket sales, everything is donated back. We get sponsors, all this good stuff, and it's this big prom. I mean, it is so much fun. You guys will have to come. But last year, for example, we raised 138,000. Like so amazing. I can't even talk about it. Like, oh, and yeah, and then like throughout the year, we'll do smaller events leading up to the event just to kind of keep that fundraising going. But we have like a volunteer list. And so now we've got these connections with other nonprofits. So then if they need volunteers, now we're opening them up to more opportunities and giving these nonprofits also more volunteers. And it's just seeing kind of everything go together with the tutoring and everything. So basically, socials with a purpose who want to give back and make a difference.
That's
That is
beautiful.
amazing.
I love it.
That's incredible. I
Yeah.
think something Brittany and I have discussed. So the podcast here, like MPowered, it's a podcast, but it's a community. And then the whole kind of something we haven't really discussed with a lot of people, like eventually on the roadmap is a nonprofit for us. Like we've got it on the roadmap. It's something we're both like, we want this to have purpose and impact and reach and benefit as many people as it can. And I think there's a specific niche of women and girls that we can absolutely impact with this.
As
Oh
far
my
as
God.
people looking to dive into the nonprofit space, what advice do you have? And what would you recommend for people who are considering it or maybe unsure about it?
Yeah. Okay. So I think my biggest advice is make sure you have the free time, because the free time is a little bit harder, because it took us like 3 years of us putting our own money in and really just like like dedicating a ton of time to it. And you just have to make sure that you are ready to put in the work, right? Because as beautiful as it is to give back, it is a lot of work up front, right? So we grew our community, we did that sort of thing. Which the good news is with the podcast, I love what you guys are doing, and I think that that alone is already going to be your community that you wouldn't really need to grow, right? It can always grow from what it is, but you would already have that base, which is huge. But just kind of figure out like, okay, who are you helping? How do you want to help them? Do you want to raise money through events? Do you want to raise money, um, or do you not raise money, but do you want to be more volunteer based and donation based? So you just kind of have to figure out kind of where you want to go with it. Is it events? Is it donating? What is it? And then from there, build your team. So if it's just you two, I strongly recommend, like maybe you have like one creative person, one super social, like knows everybody person, someone to do the financial side of it, because we just brought on like a guy to help us with that. And he's like, oh yeah, here's the meeting notes. Here's the meeting notes. Here's the spreadsheet. Here's this. We need this for taxes. We're like, oh
Where
my
do we
God.
where do we find those?
Wow.
And then also a CPA that can help specifically with nonprofits. That's
Yeah.
huge. I will give you all the information.
You're the
I will give you all.
best.
Thank you so much.
So if it feels overwhelming and you're looking to like start one, you can always reach out to me. I will give you everything that I have knowledge wise. I will introduce you to all the nonprofits that we currently work with. Because yeah, there's so much room to give back. Especially women, like 100%. I love that.
Yeah. It's something that, so Mandy actually asked me about it and was like, like this is where I want to scale us. And I was like, 1000%. I definitely think that it even puts you in a, we'll have this community, but a whole entire different community of just people who are, I don't know, it's like just more wholesome. I don't know another word to really say, but the fact of like someone, one, like yourself, being like, okay, I want to give back to the community and creating that and doing it and putting in all that work that you mentioned, all the money that you mentioned. And it's something just about you. It speaks volume without you having to say anything. Um, and
Hmm.
so I'm sure that there's been many times where people have told you that they're proud of you, but you should be proud of yourself 100%. Um, but I want to ask you, because I was a teacher, I'm not sure if you knew that. I was a second grade teacher. And so anything affiliated with children, children's books, like learning, public education is like near and dear to my heart. But I want to know what made you choose where your proceeds go and why is it for the children? And just give me more insights about that.
So a lot of honestly, we're all moms, so that was one of the top things. And then the second thing, once you start really looking into the statistics side of it, um, children are so often overlooked because we're so focused on this older group that maybe it's like the wounded warriors or something like that. So it's like we're focused on people that need it, of course, but we're not really focused on those next generations that are coming up. I think those are often forgot. And so statistically looking at it, we were like, wow, the number of kids that need stuff, even working with CLT Foundation. So they actually do scholarships to college. Like we were able to grant $10,000 through an event we did to a kid that survived brain cancer twice, going to South Carolina, a senior in high school. But he doesn't have the money for this. He doesn't have any of that. And, it's like he got some scholarship money, but it's at the end of the day, it's like he couldn't afford it. Right. But it was one of those things that was like all of his money went to medical bills and that sort of thing. And so it was so beautiful to be able to be like, oh, like, yeah, this older man wounded, he might need stuff. And I would love to, will definitely volunteer and give back to him as well. But seeing that was like, that's so often overlooked. And this kid is so freaking special. I think I,
Totally with that. Like you just changed his whole life trajectory with something that like
yes,
you impacted
this
his
little
life. You don't know where it's going to go
girl,
now.
but I
Like
tell
you put
you,
him on a path. That's
yes,
beautiful.
I cried like the whole way home.
Yeah, it'd be a ball of like total. I cry all the time. Ask Brittany. I'm always sending her photos of me crying. I'm like, I'm crying today, but I'm happy. Don't worry, it's fine. It's a good cry. But like, I'm maybe a big feely, big in the emotions.
I was gonna say we're we are very emotional, but I feel like we're emotionally in tune.
Yes,
Very emotionally in tune, and that's a difference.
yeah,
That's a difference.
and I think something like that, like to be able to, and I think when we talk about like kind of our trajectory and plans for nonprofit here, like that's exactly where our brains are headed. Is like, how do we adjust the cycle for cycle breakers, give them that
Mhm.
advantage, and help them change that whole entire trajectory. And I think you're right that so often, like, we don't realize the impact of changing that trajectory. And we kind of overlook like the kids and the teens. And it's like, you have the ability to literally change an entire life, like the next 50 years for somebody, and then generations to come. Like, you may have just broken a cycle, like a generational cycle for him. And that's such a
Yep,
beautiful, incredible thing. That's
yep,
amazing.
yep.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, with
Yeah.
your children's books, so was that like a part or alongside of? How did that come about?
Just become an author. And
Yeah,
like very
casual.
casual, normal Tuesday
I'm telling
stuff.
you, like, so I made that list when I was younger, right? And writing a book was on there. So I had written a book like high school. And as COVID hit, it was actually before COVID. And I was kind of transitioning from like working for someone and working for myself. Um, there was like a lot of like, so my book's about being kind, it's about kindness. It's a children's book. And there was like this moment in time that I just felt like the world was just like shifting. And something told me, I was like, I need to get this children's book out. And so I kept putting it off, putting it off. Till I got pregnant. And I was like, okay, my goal is to put this children's book in my little boy's nursery. That's my goal. And so that's actually what sparked it. And that is where everything came from. So it was like the state of the world, the state of me, because I was like, okay, I'm having a baby. This is the perfect time. And then I released it like right during COVID. And it actually did really well because it was like you needed kindness more than anything during COVID. But yeah, so it was just an addition. It was just something I always wanted to do. My biggest like tagline is like be the kind. So it's like be kind, but be the kind. So be the kind of person that you want to encounter. Um, and so yeah,
That's awesome.
Wow. Yeah. I'm like, I'm gonna get emo over it. I told you I cry over everything. You're gonna start that. What was that process like? I imagine like we have somebody listening here who's might be saying very similar, like maybe they're seeing that they want to contribute something for their children, or maybe it's extrinsic and maybe it has nothing to do with their own children. They don't have children, they want to be an author. That can seem like a daunting process. I feel like if you have no insight into it, what was that like? Would you do it again?
yes, I would 100% do it again. I think for my first time, I would have used a publisher because when I did use a publisher, it was much easier. I use Spark Publications, so they're right here in Charlotte, and then I actually printed in Charlotte as well. So that way, it was like everything was local. So that was a cool process. But my biggest advice: use a publisher. Your first time around, use a publisher. They make it so streamlined, and they know what they're doing. You just provide the story and approve the art, and essentially they just make it so easy for you. It is expensive. It is, like I said, like anything, you have to invest in it, but you get that money back because it's done the right way. So
That's great. That's great. I so like I said, once again, teachers. And when I would read my children's book to them, I'm like, okay, I want to try to make sure that this book reaches them. Not just they hear it, but like they truly understand the words. It reaches the kiddos. Like, so when you're writing this book, was that like a mindset of like, okay, maybe not include this, or like, what was your intentions of like reaching these children, and how did that navigate like the creation of it?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the so basic. So I have a nephew that was the age, so it's like that 5 to 8. And so I have a nephew, and so I honestly went to his house and I looked at what books he had.
Perfect.
And I kind of started to see, hey, what's your favorite book? What's this? And so then I would read those. This is also how I chose my artwork too, is I literally went to a bookstore and I kind of chose like the actual style that I wanted. But going into like, I don't, if I'm not, maybe not everyone has a kid's room they can go into. But that for me worked, where I was like, hey, what's your favorite book? What's this? And so then I would read it and analyze it. And then I shifted my baseline to match what they were into and they were understanding and they were getting. And then at the end of mine, I did a checklist where you can actually implement kindness in your day. And so it's like literally like help mom with this, open the door, whatever it might, I can't even remember the list now, but there's a literal list in the back so that they can turn around and say, okay, well, I want to show kindness like Piper. I'm going to do my checklist. And then like for the first like 2 years, if they finished the checklist, they could like submit it to me and then I would send them a little lovey, like a little Piper Fox lovey. So there was like little things. Yeah, I gave that up because ladies, you can't do it all.
You're hey,
What
no,
lasted.
this is out this week. No big deal. Oh my gosh.
That's awesome. Wait, now I have to ask you this. The name Piper, did you choose that because that was one of your baby's names?
It
Oh.
was actually, so we have a Piper dog. She's a Shiba
Oh,
Inu, looks like a fox. And so my business has always been Piper Fox.
yeah.
And so the book is actually my two dogs, Piper and Winston. And so we'll do like readings, which is so fun. And we bring Piper with us, especially right after COVID. It was so cute. And so that was really fun because it's like Piper's real, and everyone wants to meet Piper. It is like the coolest thing. So it's actually from my dog, technically my
Oh,
baby. Yes.
I love that. Wait, okay. This is just something that I thought of. This is what we're gonna do. This is where I'm gonna tell you, and you're gonna love it, and it's gonna be great. Now, granted, it's a middle school, but I was a part of Love is Blind, all that stuff. It's old news at this
Yeah.
point. But Kenneth was a principal, or is a principal, and I have
Yes.
been wanting to go to his school and like just meet his kids. Now, granted, they're in middle school, so I don't know if they're going to want to read like the younger children's book, but we'll have to go to a school one day and read together. That would be so much fun.
That
It would
would
be
be so
I'm
so
sweet.
much.
down.
That would be
Okay.
And it's
Yeah.
just so cute. And I could even like so I sell them in like bookstores and then it's on Amazon. But I have like a couple boxes of them. So like pending like how big the class was, we could like give them a signed copy, bring Piper with us. Oh my God, so cute. It is
Oh,
the best. So I did it for my son's preschool and they died.
yay.
Like
I
it
love.
is the cute. Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
That we'll plan that. We'll for sure plan that.
So
Down.
we touched on one piece yet that I do want to touch on before we wrap up on our time today. So we've talked about the fact that you're an author, you run a business, you run a nonprofit. We haven't touched on the fact that you own your own podcast and run your own
Yeah.
podcast too. I know you said you can't do it all, but you're making me believe that
You're not very convincing.
managed to do 99% of things. Brittany and I are new to the podcast world. This is a new journey for us. So I always love hearing about, like, tell us about your podcast. And then what has that experience been like of launching a podcast, and kind of walking through that process?
Sure. So the podcast that we have is called the Social Half Hour. We made it 30 minutes, and it is just us getting social with people in Charlotte, right? So if you have a story to tell, you can be on the podcast. If you own a business, you can be on the podcast. If you're just a mom and you're like here to talk about the struggles and how you're overcoming them, you can be on the podcast. It has been awesome. It has really allowed us to get to know people. And it blows my mind, which I'm sure you guys can relate to, whenever an episode comes out and people will tag you or text you like, oh my God, I got up and I went for a walk today because of your podcast. And I'm like, that's perfect. And so the journey itself was not as bad because we actually record. We have a studio that we record at. And so it wasn't as bad because because it's 30 minutes, we would knock a couple out and then we scheduled ahead.
Right.
So that's a huge tip is like, I feel like you guys do that already, but we did like 20 and then we launched. And so then, okay, granted, we're both pregnant and we knew we were going out.
Oh my God. Okay. Well, that is the circumstances for her and I. However, but no, that's phenomenal.
20. That I feel like that is
I mean,
yeah,
we're
brilliant.
we're booked out until June with guest BT Dubs listeners. But like as far as like in the bank, that's crazy.
That is beautiful.
Well, we didn't have a choice. So it was one of those things where it's like that's also a balancing factor for us. We're both so funny enough, my employee friend, partner, whatever she is having a baby too, 2 weeks after me.
Oh my.
So we were like, all right, we gotta pop these things out. But I do want to have you guys on. So we have to figure out a time for that. It is in person.
You're
What'd you say?
really close on that clock. I'm always like, you just so casual. You're like, I'm just having a baby in 2 weeks. It's really no big deal. It's 21 days. I got a lot of things to do before then, and we'll get it all done. It like this.
Yeah.
I mean,
So how do you feel about how you feel about Friday at 9? Like what? I know I'm crazy.
See you tomorrow. Oh my God.
I'm crazy. I know. I'm like, yo, let's just go there right now. What's the problem?
That I love it. I love it.
We love that. Beautiful. So
yeah, so to have you on.
You co-host, is that what I'm hearing?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Brett has that. So we always get to talk about this. I think it's something we really get to dive into now a lot. And I love like our experience and our journey there. But I know that every two people are different. Talk about your experience co-hosting for us, if you don't mind, and share like what that's been like and the relationship you have with your co-host.
Of course. So Hannah and I, we've actually been friends for over 16 years. And our relationship is one of my favorites. We constantly pick at each other, mainly her giving me a hard time. But it's perfect. Like she definitely is like the yin to my yang. And it's like, if I don't come prepared, she's prepared. If I'm too funny, she's like, or if I talk too much, it's just this perfect layout. It's been honestly pretty good. The only part that gets hard is like deciding what we're talking about and who's going to carry the conversation. That's one of those things, but we're getting better about that where it's like, okay, this is a control freak. Hannah has a great idea. She should be able to run with it. Right. Because she's so brilliant. She's so wonderful. She's hilarious. She's so good at like talking and carrying on a conversation. So it's like, I just have to remind myself that like, Jessica, like you've known this girl for just trust her, let her do her thing. So I think that's the biggest struggle is like the co-host side of it, where it's like, we have an awesome relationship. We know each other like the back of our hands, but it's realistically, it's me just being like, let her do her thing. She's allowed to have an opinion. So, but now it's like 20 episodes in, we got it. We know what we're doing, so.
It down pat for sure.
Yeah. That's amazing.
But
well, I know Mandy said last question, but I do want to ask you one more. We had our other Jess on the podcast, and she's a mom. And we do have future guests that are also mothers, but still like go-getters and being able to tackle it all. Just for our audience's purpose, and also too, I've seen both in my professional world mothers who are like really dialed into work, like extremely dialed in. And I'm not gonna lie, like call it judgment and that's okay with me. It's like, wait, but are you making any time for your babies? Um, I, by the grace of God, had a wonderful relationship with my mom. So I'm like, oh, I want your baby to have like that close, tight-knit relationship. But I'm like, I see you more than you see your baby, or and it's like, how do you find that happy medium? How do you chase your dreams, but also to know that you're showing up for your children, but also showing up for yourself as well?
Yeah. So my biggest thing is prioritize. So you got to prioritize. You got to say, okay, what can and can't I get done realistically? And then you have to remember that like their childhood is also your motherhood. And I think that's helped me a lot, where it's like, it's not just about how I'm making him feel, and this one-on-one time with him and just giving him this undivided attention. Because one day I'll look back and say, well, that was my motherhood as well. That was my chance, like, to be there. And I'm the same as you. I have a great relationship with my mom, my dad. I mean, my dad's at my house every week. I'm obsessed. And so I want that with Beckett. Like I want him to want to come to my house. I want him to want me at my house. I was literally, he's 4. And I was like, so when you're older, do you think you'd want this basement as your apartment and you could just live here? Mike's like, my husband,
He's like, yeah.
he's like, my husband's like, he's going to college. I'm like, he might start his own business in social media. You don't know. But
like, we just want him to be happy. If he needs the basement as an apartment, I just want to make sure he has all of his options laid out.
Right.
There.
dude, I'm so cool. Like, look at me, I'm cool. So I think it's focusing not just on like, hey, because while I have to keep a business and I have to do all these things because it does fill my cup and it makes me feel me. The second I give it up, I feel so out of whack. And so it definitely is one of those like reminding yourself, like, hey, it's not just their childhood, it's your motherhood too. So you have to make sure that like you're pouring into that cup in addition to your business cup. And reminding yourself, scheduling. Like I said, I literally, you guys, 7 p.m. to 9 a.m., you will not see me on my phone. Like
Love
I
it.
don't, unless I'm
Yeah.
recording him, which is like a million videos. But yeah, set a schedule, constantly remind yourself that like he doesn't realize that it's work, right? He only knows that you're ignoring him or not with him.
Yeah. I appreciate you saying it's not only my children's childhood, it's also my motherhood. And that is
Mm-hmm.
having like it's self-respect within itself, but it's also to being able to look and like almost like checking yourself. Like, hey, like I have a
Yes.
standard for myself. And that's admirable, like for sure. Um, so yeah,
You just
that's good, mom.
don't want to look back. You just don't want to look back and wish it were different because you were chasing this, you know, whatever, finding yourself in this business and whatever. Like you always, your biggest treasure, they always say, is going to be like how you spent your life, not the working hours, right? And it's like motherhood. Not everyone gets that, so you have to like realize and recognize and like put that. I mean, I will literally put my child first. I don't care if my business is burning down to the ground. If Beckett needs me, I'm there. He's my priority. So
Love it.
It's incredible. We do have, I know we both said one last question. We have one last question that we do ask every single guest.
Yes.
Obviously,
Yes.
our podcast is empowered. So I think that our goal is to help women who are listening to this feel empowered. And maybe there's something that works for you or that you bring to the table that is going to resonate with them. So I would love to know what makes you feel empowered.
honestly, I feel empowered by connecting with others, lifting everyone up around me, showing up for not only myself, but showing up for others. And I think that the more we show up for others, the more we show up for ourselves. And that also plays a role in motherhood too. So, entrepreneurship or motherhood, The more that you show up for others, the more you show up for yourself. It's a domino effect. So yeah, honestly, it's just filling other people's cup to fill mine and letting that be like a vicious cycle.
I love that. I love that so much. Where can our followers, listeners find you? How can they connect with you, especially if they want to work with you on social media? Are you taking new clients? How do they connect with you? How do they connect with Piper Fox? So forth?
Yes. So Instagram is at Piper Fox Social. We are always looking to work with people. And we're always looking to like come to your events, be part of your circle. I think one of y'all's friends actually just started the inner circle. I
Yeah,
was like, oh my God.
absolutely.
And so it's like that. So if you have anything like that, I'm always there. I'm always down. And yeah, just Instagram, Piper Fox Social, taking new clients. We do all social media management, marketing. We do event coverage. We do coaching, all of that. So yeah.